Assalamu alaikum. Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Point. I'm your host, Syed Neaz Ahmad. In our studios today, we have a gentleman who has been described as the most recognizable face of international news on television. He is none other than Mr. Stephen Cole. Stephen Cole has worked with all the channels that you can imagine: Sky, CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC. At BBC, he created a program of high technology that was known as Click, and he took that program to 28 countries. There's a lot to talk about, Stephen. Let's welcome him. Welcome to the show, Stephen. How are you today?
Syed, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your program.
Thank you, and it's an honor for us to welcome you here. I know that you crossed the city from the other side of London.
Yes. You know, I've been to the other side of the world, I think, quicker than one side of London to the other.
Well, London on Friday evening is like that.
Exactly.
You have worked with so many organizations, it's news gathering organizations, and you have presented programs, you have met so many important people, you have hosted so many programs that I don't think that there's any question left that you could not answer. Or probably I don't have any questions in my armor.
No, I'm sure you have plenty of questions. It's been an amazing ride, and I wouldn't have swapped it for the world. Launching 4 24-hour news global channels, I feel really privileged to have been involved with such a range of diverse peoples, from Sky News in '89 to CNN in Atlanta to BBC World in London, and then Al Jazeera, who made me an offer I didn't understand, in London, and then Doha. It's been fabulous.
You were born not very far away from London, and you grew up, then you moved to Birmingham. What were the circumstances that you moved to journalism rather than any other profession?
I decided I wasn't an academic, and hopefully the best journalists aren't academics. And I went, my father sort of threw up his hands in his aspiration. He wanted me to go in his business, he wanted to go to university and study this, that, and the other. In the end, he sent me for occupational guidance. And I filled in all these questions. I was 18, 19. Do you want to be an astronaut? Do you want to be a farmer? Do you want to be, I don't know, whatever. And I ticked all the boxes. I pressed all the multiple choice answers. And they came up with 3 professions for me after these 5,000 questions. One was customs and excise, the second was agriculture, and the third was journalism. And it suddenly dawned on me, I was very good at English, not maths, but very good at English. And then an advert appeared in a Birmingham newspaper saying trainee journalist wanted for a news agency. It was the biggest news agency outside of London, outside the Press Association. And I applied and I got it. And after 6 months probation, I signed my indentures for 3 years.
Right.
And it was a fabulous experience and a very fast learning experience journalistically.
What was your first story?
Well, the first one was a baptism of fire, quite literally. It was the Birmingham pub bombings. And I suppose this was 1974. And I was in the city of Birmingham that night with my editor and a few of the other journalists from the news agency in a pub. And we heard a sort of crump. Obviously, we didn't know what it was, because there hadn't been a bomb on the British mainland since the Second World War. And when we went out and investigated, we saw the results of the 2 bombs in the Mulberry Bush pub and the Tavern in the Town pub. And they killed about 22 because it was a confined space with the bomb. So I covered that, and what I saw will stay with me for the rest of my life. But at 18, 19, to have a bomb that size, I thought, where's this career going to go? And subsequently I covered the bombers' trials and everything else associated with it.
It didn't put you off, the bombing and the scenes later?
No, because I wanted, I mean, the whole point about a journalist, I think, is the Latin for why is cur, C-U-R, and that, of course, is the root of curiosity. And if you don't have curiosity, then there's no point in being a journalist. You can be an academic,
Yeah.
but not a journalist. And I wanted to know why they'd done this. I really wanted to know who'd done it. That has stayed with me throughout my career, about being irritatingly sort of curious with politicians, business leaders, you name it, to find out why. You know, what are you doing this for, etc. And if you stop being curious, then I think you might as well stop being a journalist.
Right. So from a newspaper journalist,
Yeah.
a print media journalist, you moved into
Television.
Yes.
Well, there was a crossroads because I'd completed my indentures and I was now supposedly a qualified journalist, but the only way I think that really qualified me was I had 100 words per minute shorthand and I could type, but not touch type, because touch typists look like that.
Yeah.
Whereas I was always from the notebook,
Looking at that.
which I do with my laptop. My sons now laugh when they see me type on a laptop because I'm going bang, 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 as opposed to gentle like that. But I was offered a job in Fleet Street. I was one of the youngest in the country to be offered a job in the
Which
Daily Mirror.
newspaper?
Daily Mirror. Paul Connew offered me a job. And it was then, obviously, top of the tree as a tabloid, of brilliant writers and very good journalists. And then BBC Nationwide offered me. Nationwide then was the biggest news and current affairs programme in Britain. Very popular and a range of amazing talent. And I got to know Val Singleton very well, and John Stapleton and Selina and all the others, later ones. And so I went for television, and it was a conscious choice to go into television because I thought there was another dimension to the story. With writing, yes, it was exciting and descriptive, but I thought if I could actually show pictures and write...
That you're talking about, that you're reporting about.
Yeah, to mix those words and pictures. Very few know how to make them join at the seam, because if you have the right pictures, you should shut up and just throw in the occasional word, just to point people's view towards the pictures, which is how later on I developed breaking news. But at the time I thought this other dimension would be very exciting. So I went for television and never regretted it for the moment.
It was BBC.
BBC, yeah, BBC Nationwide. Basically all the programmes in Britain had a half-hour programme at 6 o'clock. In London it was Nationwide, but everywhere else it was their own local programmes. And then at 6:30 everybody went nationwide.
Yeah.
And my first story on Nationwide in London was the size of cabbages. My first script on television.
Of EU.
Yeah, exactly. And it was comparing a cabbage bought in Mayfair Market with a cabbage in the supermarket. And I remember I did this complicated script, and I went out with a photographer to take some stills of varying
different sizes,
things,
the different prices.
sizes. But it was the process of television that was, because they were using a language I didn't understand. All the terminology, I had no idea what they're talking about. So I sort of bluffed my way through. And all my scripts were appalling, because I was writing an article or a newspaper piece, not a television script.
Yeah.
And it took me, I still got some of them. And they're very basic, and they were, the most important thing was they were very patient and very nice to me. I have to say, they were lovely. But it was so exciting. And then they sent me out to Wales, to Cardiff, and I had Wales as my entire patch, which, you know, as a journalist, you have your own patch, you have to develop the stories from that area and send them back to HQ. Same as from London to, your HQ and all the other sort of regional journalists. And so I was driving all over this beautiful country of Wales, which is stunningly lovely, and finding all these human interest stories and researching them and presenting, well, not presenting them then, they allowed me to do the occasional report. But not often, because I wasn't a reporter. I mean, the first time I did this is my first television story, they asked me to do a little light piece for a minute on a blind bowling competition in Bristol. And so I went with the crew, and the cameraman's got his camera there, and he said, "Okay, Stephen, go now." And I'm going, how do you see your chances on Saturday? And the cameraman very kindly tapped me on the shoulder and said, Steve, I think you might want to change that question. So a lot of patience was involved, but eventually I got there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this, that when you start reporting, you see, everything is ready, the cameraman is there, and probably that's, the lights are being thrown at you. What feeling do you get? I mean, I know it's very different sitting in the studio then.
It's, I'm basically trying to establish a rapport with the guest,
with the people. I mean, not here, with the people who can see you,
yes,
but you can't see them.
And hopefully, I'm asking the questions they would like me to ask.
Yeah.
And if necessary, hard questions. I remember much later at the BBC. There was a cabinet minister from Pakistan in the studio, and we were talking like this.
You remember the name?
I'm not going to tell you the name. And just where you are, there was a little monitor that I could see, as you know, the output from the wires. And I saw a group of demonstrators attacking Parliament building and running through the Parliament building. And I said, Minister, I think you're out of a job. This is on air, live on air. And he said, Mr. Cole, I think I am. Chucked his microphone off and left the studio. And I don't think he went back to Pakistan. But that was the right question at the right time. So it's a question of with President Erdogan years and years ago. He refused to speak English during the interview. So we were sitting chatting. And I was chatting in English, of course. And then I heard in my ear, okay, we're ready to go now. So I just carried on the conversation. And by then he realized he'd been caught and he had to speak English. So there are various naughty things. But I mean, you're basically trying to establish a rapport with your guest. And you are representing the viewers, not yourself. And I always do a lot of research. One of my sons is in the army, and his motto is "There's no time lost in reconnaissance."
That's true. True.
And you know that as a journalist as well. So I over research like mad. So I might have 30 questions, and I might ask in the end 10.
Yep.
But it gives you the extra confidence.
Well, sometimes it happens that your 30 questions are not enough. The answers are not so short and brief.
Well, then I get cross with the guest, and I said, "Do you want, because why give me monosyllabic answers? You're a guest. Do you want to appear on this or not?" I mean, I remember going to see Larry Ellison in Silicon Valley, and he is the boss of Oracle around the world. I mean, sort of a hugely wealthy man, about 6'5", 6'6". And I went in to see him when I was doing Click, and he said, "Mr. Cole, what do you want to know? You've got 5 minutes." So my first question was, "Larry, where'd you get your suits from?" And he looked at me, and then he spent 20 minutes.
Okay, Stephen, we need to take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue with this very interesting discussion. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back soon after this. Thank you.